We survived poverty perfectly fine, but we absolutely could not survive wealth. It makes absolutely no sense. When you are eating cheap takeout on a mattress on the floor, whispering in the dark about which utility bill to let slide this month, you assume money will fix everything. You assume that if you just grind hard enough, climb high enough, and finally reach that mythical tax bracket, the stress will evaporate. The late-night arguments will stop. The love will be permanently protected. Now, add a newborn baby to that dream. The ultimate, terrifying, beautiful milestone. You finally have the financial resources to give this tiny, fragile human everything you never had. You have the premium, tech-enabled bassinet. The organic meal deliveries. The beautifully painted nursery in the right zip code. You are a modern power couple. You have officially arrived. But arrival is a dangerous, intoxicating illusion. When you spend a decade locked arm in arm with your partner, fighting a trench war against obscurity and debt, that shared struggle becomes the absolute bedrock of your marriage. You are co-founders of a startup called Your Future. You rely on each other for survival. But in that relentless, singular pursuit of success, something insidious happens. You begin to mistake the adrenaline of ambition for actual intimacy. Let's perform an autopsy on this relationship. On paper, it is a flawless masterpiece. Two highly driven professionals. Two exceptional salaries. A picture-perfect baby. But if you strip away the vice president titles, the vesting stock options, and the perfectly curated birth announcements, what remained was a hollowed-out shell. They didn't realize that crossing the financial finish line meant they no longer had a shared enemy. Without the threat of failure binding them together, the deafening noise of the hustle faded. Suddenly, they actually had to look at each other. And what they saw were two exhausted corporate athletes who had spent so much time and energy acquiring the resources to afford a family, they forgot how to actually be one. The ambition that got them out of the basement was a beautiful, necessary fire. But a fire doesn't know when to stop burning. Once it consumed their professional goals, it began looking for new fuel. It started burning through their patience. Their empathy. Their grace for one another. The newborn phase is a brutal crucible. It takes every suppressed resentment, every unspoken frustration, and magnifies it under the blinding light of sleep deprivation. For a power couple whose entire identity was wrapped up in being competent, being in control, and constantly winning, bringing a chaotic, unpredictable baby into their meticulously planned lives was a massive shock to the system. The traits that make you an elite, high-earning professional, ruthless efficiency, emotional detachment, delegation, and an obsession with productivity, are the exact opposite of the traits required to nurture an infant or sustain a deeply connected marriage. You cannot optimize a crying baby at 3 a.m. You cannot put a disconnected spouse on a performance improvement plan. They thought their wealth was an impenetrable shield. They thought their dual income power would forever insulate their child from the harshness of the world. They had built the ultimate fortress to protect their growing family. But as the nursery was painted and the promotions were signed, they failed to notice a terrifying reality: the very things they built to guarantee their future were about to become the exact weapons that would destroy it. When you are accustomed to managing million-dollar budgets and leading entire departments, you don't just endure the chaos of a newborn. You project manage it. In the corporate world, when a process is broken or a bottleneck appears, you hire a specialist. You delegate. You optimize. So, as the crushing weight of sleep deprivation and dual executive schedules threatened to pull them under, this power couple did what they did best. They applied elite management frameworks to their own home. They began to throw money at the friction of early parenthood. The messy, frustrating task of trying to cook a healthy dinner while a baby screams on your hip. Handled by a premium, organic meal delivery service. The midnight rocking and the desperate, sleepy solidarity of trying to soothe an infant. Delegated to a highly certified night nurse. The mountains of laundry and the frantic morning scrambles. Handled by the daytime nanny. Even their communication became a marvel of modern efficiency. A shared digital calendar managed their entire existence down to the quarter hour. They scheduled 15-minute alignment check-ins between back-to-back Zoom calls. They sent calendar invites for intimacy. Date nights were outsourced to exactly Friday at 7 p.m., heavily guarded by the nanny's punctual arrival. Their home was no longer a sanctuary. It had slowly transformed into a secondary corporate headquarters. They were no longer romantic partners, they had become the co-CEOs of a highly successful logistics company that specialized in keeping a baby alive. They communicated entirely in status updates. Did the night nurse log the ounces in the app? Did you approve the household manager's grocery order? Who is covering the pediatrician appointment on Thursday, and who has a hard stop at 5? They thought they were buying peace. They genuinely believed that by stripping away all the mundane, exhausting chores of domestic life, they were protecting their energy. They thought they were clearing the runway to be perfectly present parents and deeply connected lovers. The partner who stayed home didn't just rock a sick baby. They sat in the dim light of the nursery, staring at the wall, quietly tallying the cost to their trajectory. They watched their inbox fill up with urgent emails they couldn't answer. And in that quiet, isolated anxiety, a slow poison began to drip into the marriage: resentment. Resentment is the absolute quietest killer of intimacy. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It whispered when he checked his phone under the dinner table to answer a client. It whispered when she took a conference call from the car on a Sunday afternoon. They began scorekeeping. The marriage morphed into a brutal accounting ledger of perceived debts and unacknowledged sacrifices. I covered the Tuesday morning shift, so you owe me Thursday night. I took a hit on my third quarter deliverables so you could travel for that summit. I let you sleep 4 hours last night, I only got 2. They were weaponizing their exhaustion against each other. In the relentless pursuit of professional survival, they forgot that a marriage cannot function as a transactional marketplace. When every diaper change is leveraged as a bargaining chip for future uninterrupted work time, you are no longer building a life together. You are just managing a very hostile corporate merger. The emotional chasm grew infinitely wider. They stopped asking about each other's days because they frankly didn't have the emotional bandwidth to care. The empathy well was completely dry. They convinced themselves they were just navigating a temporary, exhausted phase of early parenthood. They thought they could simply outwork the distance between them, completely blind to the quiet, irreversible decision one of them was about to make in the dark. We are conditioned by television to believe that a marriage ends in a spectacular explosion. A screaming match in the rain. A dramatic discovery of a secret double life. A shattered wine glass against the kitchen wall. But for the high-achieving, hyper-rational power couple, the end does not arrive with a bang. It arrives in absolute, terrifying silence. The anatomy of their breaking point wasn't a fight. It was just a Tuesday evening. The baby was already asleep, seamlessly put down by the evening nanny. The kitchen was spotless, wiped down by the cleaning service. The ambient temperature of the house was perfectly regulated by a smart thermostat. They were sitting on the same custom-upholstered sofa, bathed in the blue light of their respective laptops, clearing out their inboxes before bed. And suddenly, she stopped typing. She looked up from her screen and looked at him. She really looked at him. He was a brilliant, wealthy, incredibly successful man. He was an excellent provider. He was even, in his heavily scheduled windows of time, a good father. But as she stared at the side of his face illuminated by the screen, a chilling realization washed over her. She felt absolutely nothing.